It was a warm Roman afternoon when the world turned its eyes to the Vatican. For the first time in nearly a decade, the white smoke had risen. Pope Leo XIV, newly elected, stepped onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica. The crowd below was a sea of flags, prayers, phones, and silence. Everyone expected tradition. A message of unity, peace, maybe even environmental responsibility. But the Pope's first words signaled something else entirely. "In our time," he began, "we've built machines that speak faster than thought. We've mapped the stars, measured the atom, rewritten the rules of life. But in all this building, we are forgetting how to kneel." A shift moved through the crowd, subtle, curious. "There are those," he continued, "who offer vaccines to the world, feed the hungry, connect the disconnected, and for that we thank them. But if we do all this and forget who we are before God, we have fed the body and starved the soul." No name was mentioned, but everyone knew. In Seattle, at that very moment, Bill Gates sat in a quiet corner of the Gates Foundation campus. A small team was reviewing logistics from a malaria eradication project. The television in the lounge was muted, but the subtitles caught his eye. "The Pope urges tech leaders to remember God." He smirked slightly. Another philosophical jab, he thought. Another sermon wrapped in digital anxiety. But then came the quote, playing now across every headline. "You who gave the world connectivity, I invite you now to consider eternity." And just like that, what felt like a global sermon suddenly felt personal. Ewo. By nightfall, the world was talking. Was the Pope referring to Bill Gates? Rome versus Silicon Valley? A call to faith or a veiled critique? Opinion columns exploded. TV panels debated the meaning of the message. Some applauded the Pope for reaching out. Others accused him of starting a fight he couldn't finish. And in the midst of it all, Gates did something unusual. He said nothing. He turned off the news, shut the blinds of his study, and sat down at his desk. He picked up an old notebook. No tech, no screens. Just pen and silence. Across the ocean in a candlelit room inside the Vatican, Pope Leo XIV wrote something too. Not a speech, not a decree, just a single sentence in his leather-bound journal. "The most brilliant minds of our age know how to fix a heart, but have forgotten how to lift one." The invitation had been made, and the world, unsure of where it would lead, held its breath. Bill Gates was sitting in his office in Seattle, reviewing reports from a new clean water initiative in sub-Saharan Africa, when his assistant walked in with a thick white envelope. "It's from the Vatican," she said, placing it gently on his desk. Bill looked at it for a long moment. It wasn't every day he got mail from the Pope. The envelope was heavy, with a golden seal and elegant handwriting. It felt old, not in a bad way, but in a way that made him pause. He slowly opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter, signed by Pope Leo XIV, the new head of the Catholic Church. "Mr. Gates, your work has touched every part of the world. You have helped people live longer, better lives. For that we are grateful. But there are questions science cannot answer. What gives life meaning? What heals the soul? I don't write to debate or to convince. I write to ask, would you sit with me? Not as believer and non-believer, but as two men asking what comes next." Bill leaned back in his chair. The letter didn't preach. It didn't judge. It simply asked, and for some reason he couldn't explain, he found himself deeply moved by it. There was something unusual in the tone. Quiet, respectful, almost vulnerable. 3 days passed before he made his decision. He didn't make an announcement. No press, no foundation tweets. He just packed a bag, told his closest team he was taking a short trip, and boarded a plane to Rome. The jet landed early in the morning. Paparazzi were already there, snapping photos, shouting questions. "Are you meeting the Pope? Is this about faith? Are you converting?" Bill didn't answer. He didn't even look their way. That afternoon, he walked through the gates of Vatican City. It felt like entering another world. Old stone, soft sunlight, the quiet echo of footsteps in massive halls. He was guided to a small private garden near the Apostolic Palace. There were only 2 chairs under an olive tree. Waiting in one of them, calm and smiling, was Pope Leo XIV. No microphones, no cameras, no crowds, just 2 men. "Mr. Gates," the Pope said as he stood and extended his hand. "You came. Thank you." Bill shook his hand. "I still don't know why," he admitted honestly. The Pope chuckled gently. That makes two of us, he said. But sometimes, the question matters more than the answer. And with that, they sat down. The world didn't know it yet, but something had already begun. When Bill Gates landed in Rome, nothing felt ordinary. Even walking through passport control, he kept asking himself, is this really happening? There had been no public statement, no itinerary shared with his team, just a sealed letter from the Vatican that read, "The Holy See welcomes your presence. The matter is not political. It is personal." A black car was waiting for him at the private terminal. No license plate, no insignia, just a quiet driver in a dark suit who nodded silently and opened the door. As they moved through the narrow streets of Rome, Bill stared out the window. Tourists bustled around the Colosseum, the Spanish Steps, the cafes. Life went on, but something inside him felt still, almost weightless. The car turned sharply and pulled into a private gate along the high walls of Vatican City. The guards didn't ask for ID. They just looked at Bill, nodded once and waved them through. That's when it hit him. This wasn't just a meeting. It was something else. The car stopped in a small courtyard. A single Swiss guard stood beside an old olive tree, waiting. Without saying a word, he motioned for Bill to follow. Through quiet stone corridors and arched walkways, Bill was led to a modest garden behind the Apostolic Palace. There, under the soft light of early afternoon, sat two chairs. One of them was occupied. Pope Leo XIV stood as Bill entered. He was shorter than Bill expected, but his presence was larger than life. Dressed in simple white robes, he wore no crown, no golden ornaments, just a plain wooden cross around his neck and kindness in his eyes. "Mr. Gates," he said, extending his hand with a warm smile. "You came. Thank you." Bill shook his hand, feeling a strange mix of hesitation and curiosity. "I didn't plan to," Bill replied honestly. "But the letter, it stayed with me." They sat down. The Pope's voice was calm, deliberate. "You've spent your life solving problems no one dared to touch," he said. "You've built systems, saved lives. But what do you do when the questions are not mathematical?" Bill hesitated. "I suppose I avoid them." The Pope nodded, not with judgment, but understanding. "So did I once." There was a long pause. The wind stirred the leaves above them. Somewhere nearby, a bell rang. "I didn't bring a speech," the Pope said. "And I didn't call you here to convert you. I called you because the world is asking questions. And I believe your voice still matters, and perhaps more than ever." Bill looked at him silent. For the first time in years, he didn't have an answer. And maybe, he thought, that's why he was really here. The envelope sat on Bill Gates's desk for nearly 4 days. It remained unopened for the same amount of time. His assistant had not touched it nor seen it. It was situated next to quarterly reports, emails, and a cold coffee. Every time he walked past, his eyes caught the envelope, white, thick, and quiet, belonging to a Vatican seal and a personal letter from the newly appointed Pope. Despite his reluctance to open it, Bill still felt uneasy about the content. The headlines: Pope Leo XIV sends private message to Bill Gates. Spiritual confrontation or publicity? Faith meets fortune. He realized his discomfort when he heard the Pope saying, "What good is it to advance technology if your own soul remains unsearched?" Bill's discomfort morphed into something more complex, a feeling of discomfort. Not anger or guilt, but an uncomfortable curiosity, a question about what he truly believed. That curiosity led him to the book Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, given to him as a graduation gift by his friend Pete Cunningham. The passage, "A man does not call a line crooked unless he has some idea of a straight line." Bill was struck by how true it was. The line between good and bad, true and false, was often blurred, and sometimes unclear. He didn't believe in one thing. He was always questioning. He always looked for more questions, more evidence than answers. This realization led him back to his office. He dialed his assistant's line and whispered, "Marlene." Her voice came through the intercom. "Yes, sir?" He asked, "Father Thomas Murray from the ethics debate I had a few years back? I'm still there. Is there anything else you need?" He sighed. "I just wanted to talk one more time, private, no cameras." Marlene's voice came back. "Understood." Bill closed the phone and placed the book, Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, in front of him. As he read the first chapter, He sensed a quiet kind of light slowly breaking through. In the end, Bill Gates learned that searching for truth is far more important than embracing any particular belief system or even adhering to any official stance. Instead, he believes in seeking the truth for himself. It's the most important journey a man can embark upon. Pope Leo XIV didn't rush to speak after the meeting. His silence was intentional. In the 5 days that followed Bill Gates's private visit to the Vatican, no press conferences were held. Not a single official statement was released. Yet the world was already talking. CNN ran the headline, "Bill Gates at the Vatican, a crisis of faith?" The Guardian asked, "What did the Pope say to Gates?" Le Figaro mused, "A historic dialogue between code and creed." And through it all, Gates said nothing. No tweets, no interviews, no quiet clarifications, just silence. But that silence was louder than most speeches. Then, on the morning of the 5th day, the Vatican issued a rare public invitation. An open faith forum would be held at Rome's Piazza Navona. Pope Leo would speak and there would be a guest. By 7 a.m., the square was full. The air was cool, skies overcast. Flags hung motionless as a hush swept over the plaza. Then the giant digital screen lit up. There he was, Bill Gates. The murmurs began. Is it really him? Why did he come back? Is he going to speak? Moments later, he stepped onto the open-air platform beside the Pope. He wore a charcoal blazer over a pale blue shirt. His eyes scanned the crowd, not just looking at faces, but searching for something deeper, something uncertain. Pope Leo placed a hand gently on his back, and Gates moved toward the podium. He didn't read from notes. He didn't blink often. He just began. Most of my life I've believed in solving problems. Logic, data, code, those were my languages. I thought we could debug the world. Cure it, patch it, perfect it, but life isn't an equation. He paused, swallowed, and looked out again. A few days ago, the Pope told me something I couldn't shake. He said, "Not all light comes from a screen." At first, I didn't want to hear it, but I came here because I couldn't stop hearing it. The crowd held its breath. I came to this city expecting to disagree. I came with arguments. I'm leaving with questions. Good ones, honest ones. I don't have answers yet, but for the first time in a long time, I want to ask. He stepped back. Silence. Then a slow, respectful wave of applause spread across the square. Pope Leo leaned in, whispered something to him. Gates nodded, and for the first time that morning, he smiled. Not the confident tech mogul, but something more uncertain, human, vulnerable. It wasn't a confession, but it was the beginning of one. The atmosphere in the Apostolic Palace had shifted. For the first time during his week-long stay, Bill Gates wasn't being led by an aide or scheduled into an official meeting. He walked the marble corridor alone, each step echoing in the quiet space like a drumbeat of anticipation. In his hands he carried nothing, not a device, not a notebook, not a speech, just silence. The guards at the door opened it without a word. Inside was a much smaller chamber than before. No towering ceilings, no gold-trimmed panels, just a wooden table, 2 simple chairs, and a crucifix mounted on the wall. A soft light streamed through the arched window. The room felt more like a monk's study than the heart of the Vatican. Pope Leo XIV was already there, sitting with his back straight but his expression soft. He looked not like a global leader today, but like a father waiting for a son to return home. Bill stepped inside. He didn't sit immediately. "I don't know what this is," Bill began quietly. "I've stood before heads of state, UN councils, crisis panels, but this feels different." The Pope gave a warm nod. "Because it is." Bill sat down slowly. His eyes didn't meet the Pope's at first. They wandered the room, lingering on the crucifix, the old books on the shelves, the candle flickering in the corner. He cleared his throat. "I was raised in a home where we respected belief, but didn't live by it. I never dismissed religion. I just didn't feel the need for it. I believed in what I could see, build, prove, measure." He paused. "But this past week, it's shaken something. When the missile struck the Microsoft campus in Haifa, I felt something break in me. Not just fear, not just loss. It was deeper. Like the world reminded me, you're not in control." He looked up now, his voice tighter. "For years I've been praised for helping solve things. Malaria, sanitation, digital education. But I started wondering, Have I really saved anyone? Or just delayed the inevitable? I've put bandages on a bleeding planet. But I don't know if I've ever asked myself why I cared so much in the first place. There was a pause. The Pope remained silent. I've stayed up these nights in the Vatican, Bill continued, thinking about my mother. She died young. She had faith. I didn't understand it then. But now I wonder, maybe she knew something I didn't. Maybe she had a peace I never allowed myself to seek. His voice cracked. I don't know how to believe. Not like you. Not like her. But I'm tired of pretending I don't need something deeper. The Pope slowly rose and walked around the table. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he reached into his robes and pulled out a small, worn rosary. He gently placed it in Bill's hand. You don't have to know how, the Pope finally said. You just have to begin. Faith is not knowledge, it's surrender. It's choosing to believe there's something more than yourself, and being willing to let that something in. Bill looked down at the rosary. His fingers trembled as they ran along the beads. And what do I say? He asked. The Pope smiled. You begin with honesty. Just speak. He listens. Bill looked back at the crucifix. His face softened. Not with certainty, but with surrender. I don't know if I believe in you. He whispered aloud to the stillness in the room. But I want to believe in something. I'm tired of carrying everything by myself. A tear slipped down his cheek. I want peace. Not the kind I engineer. The kind I feel when I'm not the center of everything. The Pope stepped beside him, placing a hand on Bill's shoulder. Then today, he said softly, you are no longer alone. There was no applause, no headlines, just the sound of one man laying down his armor. Not as a billionaire, not as a leader, but as a soul learning how to kneel. As Bill Gates stepped back into the hotel lobby, the weight of the past few days sat heavily on his shoulders. The streets of Rome buzzed outside, but inside everything felt still. He poured a glass of water, sat down, and opened the envelope the Pope had handed him earlier. Inside was a handwritten note. Just one sentence. Faith is not the absence of logic. It is the courage to believe when logic is not enough. Bill read it again, then a third time. He set it down slowly. That night, he didn't open his laptop. He didn't check the markets. Instead, he stared out the window at the Vatican dome, glowing under the moonlight. A man of data had met a man of belief, and something inside him had shifted. He didn't convert. He didn't pray. But for the first time in decades, he wondered, what if?